This is The High Road with author and registered psychotherapist, Dr. Marlene Bizub. Dr. Marlene speaks to the heart of people who need to be lifted up and get out of the muck and mire that often accompanies major life changes, such as divorce or separation. Dr. Marlene will aspire to help parents of divorce to love their children more than they hate their ex and to learn to take the high road. So please welcome the host of The High Road, Dr. Marlene.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. George, thank you for being here again.
Always a pleasure, Dr. Marlene, and at least in our time zone, good morning.
Yes, good morning. I don't know why we ever agreed to do a morning show, but that's okay. That's okay. We'll move on to the topic at hand. As I told you before we started, I am super excited about this topic, not because it's a good topic, it's actually kind of a bad topic, but it's a needed topic, it's necessary. We're going to talk about things parents should not say to their kids when the parent is going through divorce, they are divorced. It doesn't matter what stage of the process they're in. There's certain things, as you and I know, that parents should not say to their kids. So we're going to dive into that today. And I have some great real life examples, as I'm sure you do too. I'll let you comment on that. Have you heard some things that you had to tell your clients, don't say that to your child?
Oh, absolutely. And really, it's a question of short-term gratification for the parent wanting to be manipulative or
Mhm.
induce guilt, or long-term where they want a healthy relationship as that child ages and goes into adulthood, I would imagine.
Right, right. And parents, when they're going through divorce, and I get that it's a fight, usually, not always, but usually. I get that. But parents want to win, or they want everyone on their side. And first of all, the first red flag for me in my office is when people come in, whether it's the parents or the kids, and they're talking about sides. I mean, I've had kids walk in and say, whose side are you on, mom's or dad's? They already have figured out that there's a line drawn and that people have chosen sides. And so I let them know I'm not on either side. And should we really have sides? And then kids will say, no, we shouldn't, but nobody has said that to them. Everybody is busy trying to get people on their side that nobody says, okay, we shouldn't have sides here.
No, and I think it's particularly sad when parents try to recruit children to their side of the issue.
Yeah.
I think it's damaging. It's harmful to the child. It's unfair to the child, and it can do lasting damage to the parent-child relationship.
Yes. Yes. That's what parents don't see. These kids are going to grow up and they're going to resent you because they're going to look back in from adult eyes or through adult eyes. Uh-oh, someone is knocking on my window. Anyway, um, people, I'm sorry, that just threw me. People will look back, like I said, through adult eyes, and they'll realize what the parent was doing, you know?
I think that's true, and it's unfortunate because then the resentment starts all over again.
Yes. Yes. Yep. And I mean, they are going to grow up. Like I said, they are at some point going to become adults and view things not from a child's perspective. And so when that time comes, it's just really important that parents have done things properly and not given their children reasons to feel resentful and um, to ruin their relationship, like you said.
I think that's true, and it's unfortunate that it's when that's going on that our role as attorneys are more focused on counselor than advocate.
Yeah,
And if we have a delicate balance to strike where we retain our client's trust, but we're able to change the direction of their thinking or their behavior.
yes, yes, exactly. And so, talk a little bit about that. Um, the role of, and we've talked about it before, but it's worth repeating. Talk about the role of counselor versus advocate for your clients.
Well, we're attorneys and counselors at law, and there's a tension between our legal obligation to seek the goals of the client for the representation and trying to direct their thinking to a more constructive way, a less destructive way for their parent child relationship. So we have to be balanced in our presentation. We have to reassure the client that we are on their side, if you will, speaking of sides.
Yes.
Uh, and but we're trying to help them lay the foundation for a lifetime relationship with their children.
Yes. Yes. And so that's what we need to be focused on, is not getting people on our side or winning or any of that. We have to be focused on how can we best take care of these kids.
Well, and I think we can appeal to the parents and say, you know, you're winning if you have a long term healthy relationship with your children. That is winning.
Yes. Yes, it is. It is. So let's talk about some of the things that parents shouldn't say to their kids. And the first one that comes to mind that often is said early in the process is, I didn't want this divorce. That's a horrible thing to say. I understand your need to say it, but you just made the other parent the bad guy. What's your thought about that?
I think that's true. I think it's a little bit unrealistic to think that a parent won't express some sort of regret. And if that's the way they express it, by saying, I didn't want this divorce, I don't think they really stop and see that as vilifying the other parent. I
Right.
think they see it as explaining to their child or children uh, that they feel badly as well, but they're picking difficult words to express those feelings that are not the most constructive for their children.
Yes. Yes. And like you said, they don't realize they're vilifying the other parent. Often, and a number of the things we're going to talk about today, this is true for, often the parents really aren't thinking about the implications of what they say. They don't, like you said, they don't intend to vilify the other parent by saying that. But once you say, I didn't want this, what you're telling your child is the other parent did. So then they go to the other parent, and I've seen this happen many times over the years, and say, why don't you want to be married to dad anymore? Why don't you want to be married to mom anymore? And they just should not be asking their parent that question and putting the parent on the spot, because the other parent doesn't really want them to answer that question. Because the truth is, there may be a very good reason why that parent wants a divorce. And does the other parent want the parent who wants the divorce to tell the child what they did that makes them, what the other parent did that makes them want a divorce? I mean, I doubt they want them to know that, because that's going to vilify them.
Well, what would be an appropriate response to a child who says, "Why don't you want to be married to mom or dad anymore?" How does a parent appropriately
Yes.
respond to that inquiry from the child?
Oh, I'm glad you asked because there is a way to say, your mom and I, or your dad and I, just don't get along very well. And usually that's the truth. Usually there's a lot of fighting that goes on that precipitates a separation or divorce. And so you can say to the child, you know how we fight a lot? And the child will acknowledge that. Well, we're not going to be fighting anymore because we're not going to be here together. We don't want to fight in front of you. We don't want to expose you to that. But the truth is, we don't get along very well. And we didn't see that and know that when we met. And you can also explain that some of this, depending on their age, you're not going to understand until you get older. And I will talk to you more about it when you get older. But sometimes we don't know what people are really like until you live with them. And so by then you've made a commitment and often had children. And now you realize being in the same home 7 days a week, 20, maybe not 24 hours a day, but enough hours out of the day, they realize how much they don't get along.
I think, isn't it possible that middle to older age teenagers actually experience a sense of relief when their parents stop fighting?
Yes, yes, I'm glad you brought that up because often kids will say to me, I'll say, "Are you sad about your parents' divorce?" And often they'll say yes, but there's times that they'll say no, especially the older kids, but even younger ones. They'll say, "No, I'm glad they're getting a divorce. They fight all the time. I told mom or dad or both of them that they need to just separate." They see it and experience it and don't want to live with it. And so, yes, that's a good point that kids will often be happy, as weird as that sounds, that in a certain respect, that the parent is divorcing.
I think that's true, and the the children, as they age into puberty and post puberty, they're withdrawing from their parents anyway to an extent, and we hope that they do not move toward inappropriate friends and acquaintances, but we want to make an environment with divorcing parents. We want them to make an environment where the children feel comfortable at ease. They don't have to defend either parent, the behaviors of the parents. And that takes courage on the part of people who are very, very hurt, very, very angry. It takes an amount of courage for them to subordinate their anger and their feelings of justification uh, for the best interests of their children and the long-term emotional health of their children. Uh, we
Yeah.
we we tend to understand that it takes courage and it's not easy, especially when people are hurt and angry. But it's worth it, and we have
Yeah.
to emphasize that.
Yes, absolutely. And, going back to what to say to kids, what to say to them, a good fallback response always is, it's an adult issue and you don't need to worry about it. Now, the first time a parent says that to their child, they're not going to be happy to hear it. It's like, no, I want to know what's going on. Tell me why. Some things kids don't need to know. And they will come to not only accept that response, but respect it. And I've even had kids kind of roll their eyes and laugh about it when the parent starts in on it's an adult issue and the kid will finish. And I don't need to worry about it. I know. But they get it, they get it.
No,
And they do often go back when they get older, even teenage years, and say, "Thank you for letting me be a kid. thank you for protecting me or shielding me from those adult issues. And they'll be thankful.
Well, and that's important, and we have to take people's vision and stretch it so that they see there are going to be years to come when their children aren't children. They need to have an emphasis on the behaviors that will enable the children to have a good, healthy relationship with their parents as they become adults themselves.
Right, right. Because there's nothing saying they will. As we talked about last week about emancipating children, there's nothing saying that as adults, they have to have a relationship with you. Before they're adults, they do. The court will mandate it, and kids will go begrudgingly, and parents will make them, even though they don't always want to. But after they turn 18, you can't do a thing if they don't want to have a relationship with you. Also, it's always good to ask yourself when they are 20, 25, 30, and you're sitting around the dinner table talking about childhood, reminiscing, what do you want your kids to remember? Do you want them to say, thank you for shielding us from all that? Or do you want them to say, why? Why'd you have to tear us apart? And so,
Well,
yeah,
I think it can be very, very difficult, and I mean really difficult. But if a parent can encourage their child or children to remember, for example, the other parent's birthday,
yes,
uh, to be sure that you remember mom's birthday or dad's birthday or something like that. That takes a lot of strength and courage, and we understand that. But
yeah.
the payback for that is a more healthy relationship with your child or children, and especially as they enter adulthood.
Yes, for sure. I still do that. My son is 36, and I still remind him of his dad's birthday.
Hmm.
But I think we need to do that. We need to do that. And same with Mother's Day and Father's Day. Help your child make something for that parent, buy something for that parent, whatever. Treat them the way you would want them to treat you.
And that is very key, but I think a lot of parents don't have the education around a co-parenting relationship after divorce or separation. And so they're when and where and how are they going to obtain that education unless they go to some divorce recovery workshop or something of that nature. And because these things are not intrinsic. There's no manual that addresses these things. So we have to have parents invest in their parenting skills, if you will, their co-parenting skills, and their skills in terms of interacting with their children on things of an adult nature.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so those things are important, and they require some education and some effort on the part of the parent.
Yes, for sure. For sure. And we know emotions are high when people are going through separation and divorce. And we don't expect this to be easy, but you have to stop and think about the implications for your children. When we come back, we will talk about, because we're going to take a short break here in a minute. We will talk about in reunification cases, which are the toughest cases of all these family court cases, what you don't want to say to your children because it really will further damage the relationship. So we'll talk about that when we come back, but there are some real important don'ts here. And so, especially if you're estranged from your child or children, you're going to want to listen to this next segment. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We're talking today about things that separated or divorced or divorcing parents need to avoid saying to their children. And as I said before we went to break, the toughest cases of these cases, and I think you'll agree, George, are cases where children are estranged from one of their parents. And it can be because of a variety of reasons. We won't go into all of that. But often there is some degree of the parent earning it. And there's a lot of reasons for that too. But when we try to reunify children and parents, a parent, one of the biggest mistakes parents can make is saying and doing things that they think they're conveying what they're feeling, and it may be, but it's detrimental to not only the child, but their relationship. And I'm going to throw an example out and then we can talk about it. But something as simple as, I miss you, can be taken as you're trying to make me feel guilty. Okay. And a parent might not mean it that way, and a child might not take it that way under normal circumstances when they aren't estranged. But if they're estranged, and usually just an I miss you is okay. But when we get into I miss you so much. And I had one dad just this last week, I'm not kidding, texted the child and said, I think about you all day, every day. Well, when she came into my office, she said, all that does is put pressure on me. And not only did it put pressure on her, but she said, it makes me feel like he's trying to guilt me. I'm sure he didn't mean it that way. He just wants her to know how much he misses her. But it's a bit extreme to say, I think about you all day, every day.
Yeah.
And she showed me the text, so she's not exaggerating. He truly said that. And she did not respond at all. And we'll talk about that later too, because I've got more to say about that. But just his response, he probably has no idea that she feels he's pressuring her to see him and talk to him and all of that, or that that's making her feel like he not making her feel guilty, but and it could do that too, which is bad, but it's making her feel like he is trying to make her feel guilty. Now,
Mhm.
that's detrimental to the relationship. So I'm going to let you take it from there and tell me what you think about that.
Well, I think that possibly in that case, dad really was possessed of a lot of emotional feeling for her and wanted to express that and was probably not setting out to be inappropriate. Uh, but again, the learning curve has to be there because there's no manual that comes with kids. And so he probably did it innocently. I would give him the benefit of the doubt and say he did it innocently, and it was just an expression of love, and thought it was a very tender expression of love, not realizing that it invokes guilt and feelings of, well, how do I handle this? What do I do? How does mom feel about this?
Mhm.
So I would think that it's a learning situation for dad there. I would hope so, that he would not realize uh, initially what pressure that puts on his daughter.
Right, right, exactly. And it is going to be a learning, well, hopefully, will be a learning experience for him. But it is something that in my role, I have to address. And since it's just happened this last week, I mean, it was earlier this week, she told me about this. I have not yet spoken with dad about it. So I will get back with everyone on how that conversation turns out. But, certainly I'm going to try to make it a learning experience. And I want parents out there to hear that we're not being judgmental or critical. It's going to feel that way. But I always tell parents that too. I am not intending to criticize you. I know you don't know how to respond and what to say and not say, but here's how that statement made your child feel. And then usually once they realize it, sometimes they get defensive. But oftentimes once they realize it, they hadn't even thought about it. And they say, oh, yeah, now that you put it that way, I can see where that would make her feel that way. And in this particular case, and this I have reminded him of a time or two, the judge said, I don't want her to feel pressured. Well, that was first thing she said is, "That makes me feel pressured to see him." And so, I had told him a couple times, we've talked a couple of times since we were last in court about how the judge said that. So I will again gently remind him, you know how the judge said, "Don't pressure her." She felt pressured. But again, you're right, George. Parents don't know, which is why we're here and why we do this, is to help educate parents and help them know what to say and not to say.
Well, and I think it's sad, my own personal experience being estranged from one adult child,
Hmm.
and those seeds of estrangement were sowed years and years ago. And
Yes.
I don't know if you do reunification with adults or not, but I would imagine that really some cases present like that, where you have
Mhm.
a young adult who is estranged from a parent, and to try to heal that relationship must require a lot of skill.
Yes, yes. And to answer your question, yes, we do therapy with adult children if they're willing. We can't make them, but if
Right.
they're willing. In fact, I sent an email this morning to a dad who has a 17-year-old and said he's going to graduate in May. He's going to go off to college in the fall. He'll turn 18 in the fall. But is there any hope? And I said, not only is there hope, let's do it now because
Mhm.
now time is of the essence. And I said that to him too in the email. Time is of the essence because once they turn 18, we can't make them come in for therapy, of course. But often the seeds are sown years before, and where it becomes impossible for me to help this situation is when it wasn't created by, or not just created by, that parent. When there's outside influences, like maybe the other parent or other people in the child's life, like maybe grandparents or someone like that, who instill those feelings, those negative feelings toward one parent within the child. Um, that's hard for even me to overcome, even in therapy, because somebody else has helped cause them to feel this way. And so overcoming that can be tough.
I think, again, we see the example of where grandparents can be a great asset
Hmm.
or a significant liability. And
Yes.
oftentimes they're above the fray. They've had their divorces, they've had their battles in life, and they can be a terrific sanctuary for children if they're close enough, if they're physically located close enough to each other. I know that my adult son said when he was uh, overstressed and so forth, he would escape to his grandparents. They lived about a half a
Hmm.
mile, and so it really is a question of, does a person want to satisfy that anger and feelings of being shortchanged, or do they want to invest in a long-term relationship with their children?
Yes, exactly, exactly. That is a good way of putting it. Is you've got to look at the big picture or the long-term effect. Maybe you're not going to have a great relationship today, or you're not going to be able to tell them everything you want to today. But in the long run, what's best for them and what serves you maintaining a relationship with them? That's the question.
I think that's true, and everybody does this, makes an individual decision about this.
Yeah.
When my son became an adult in his 30s, I asked him, I said, "Do you want to see the papers?" Because I had been vilified uh,
Mm.
for having taken advantage of their mom, and I said, "You're welcome to see the papers," but
Yeah.
that did not happen. And
Yeah.
he said, "No, I know that, Dad." And
Yeah.
so to have that relationship in with your children who are no longer children, they may have
Right.
children of their own, is really invaluable. And it's a question of, does a person want to indulge their own anger and feelings of resentment and being shortchanged, and or do they want to invest in a long-term relationship with their children? Which is more
Right.
satisfying?
Yes. Yes. And being willing to delay the truth, because, like in your case, the truth, I'm sure you wanted to tell him when he was much younger, but that's inappropriate at 13 or 14 or 15 to share court papers with the child. But at 30, absolutely, or even 25, absolutely. Do you want to see the papers? You're an adult now. But we can't do it with kids, even if they're 17. We can't do it with kids. And so,
Right.
I mean, the court's going to get on us if we do that. There's times I'm tempted, but we have to avoid doing that. I'll share another situation very similar, and then we'll come back to that first one because I do want to talk a little bit more about things that happened on down the road from that first one I told you about. Um, but in my other situation, and these children are younger, 7 and 10, but dad was on a call, and we do video chat because they're all out of town. And at the end of the call, he said, "I love you." Well, I'm managing the call. So, right about that time, I disconnected the call. Well, the kids had not responded with, I love you. And so the next call we got on, the first thing the dad said, unbeknownst to me that he was going to do this, he said, hey, at the end of the last call, I told you guys I love you, and neither one of you said, I love you back. And that really hurt my feelings. And I just felt I should tell you. Well, the kids didn't know what to say. And after the call, they told me, and these are young kids. In fact, I think she was 6 when this happened. It was a few months ago. Said to me, I feel like he's trying to make us feel guilty. So again, kids are taking this with feelings of not guilt, but feelings of you're trying to make me feel guilty. And it doesn't work because they can see that. Or if it does, shame on you then too, because we don't need to be putting a guilt trip on our children. But if it doesn't make them feel guilty, then you have again further damaged your relationship with them because now they feel like you're trying to make them feel guilty. And I don't know that he was. I think he was truly just trying to say that hurt my feelings. Now, I spoke up and said, oh, that wasn't them, that was me. I disconnected the call before they had a chance to respond. Well, he thought they had done that and had not said, I love you. And so, anyway, but then one of the children also asked me, do we have to say, I love you every time our parent says it or someone says it? And I said, well, no, I don't think you should ever feel like you have to tell someone you love them. Now, when it's your parent or someone like that, it's nice to tell them you love them, but do you have to? No. And that was a good point, too. I think they're kind of learning where and how and when they should set boundaries. Like, should someone be forcing me to say, I love you anyway? Well, I'm sure the dad didn't think about that. What do you say now that your kid says, well, do I have to say I love you? So, anyway, I'll drop that right there and let you pick it up and say what you want.
Well, I think one thing we have to understand is that both children and parents are hurting during a divorce.
Hmm.
And it's critical to understand that. So if a parent can express love and appreciation for a child without making them feel guilty, without making them feel like they have an obligation to respond a certain way, I think that's terrific. But on the other hand, if they have an expectation that they can make the child behave in a certain way or respond in a certain way, then we get into trouble.
Yes. Yes. And that is for our own need. It's our own ego gratification that you say, I love you too. Is it courteous? Yes. Is it probably the most appropriate? Sure. But should kids feel like they have to just because it makes us feel good? And that leads me to my takeaway point here. Your children are not responsible for your happiness or your feeling good. And so let's not put that on them. That is not their responsibility to make sure that you feel good.
No, and the way I express that is I say you don't want to try to make your child your emotional caretaker.
Right. Yes, exactly. Very well said. Very well said. That's a mic drop statement, but that's true. They are not our emotional caretakers. They're not.
Right.
And so that's a really good way of putting it. All right, believe it or not, it is time for another quick break. And then we will come back to the other point on that first case that I was going to share and finish this out. But good stuff here that we need to talk about and that parents need to think about for sure. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. Yeah, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Before we went to break, I said there was something else I wanted to share about that first situation that we talked about. And that is when the dad texted the girl, and she's 11, she might be 12, but in that range, she didn't respond right away. And next thing you know, dad is texting mom to make sure daughter got his text. Okay, at this point, this is overkill. If it was something important, that'd be different. If it was something he needed an answer to or something like that from the child, that would be different. And I don't know how you feel about it, George. I'm going to let you share how what your thoughts are in a minute. But again, the daughter said, why is he now texting my mom asking if I got his text? I'll respond when I want to respond. And he didn't wait that long. It's not like it was the next day and it's like, hey, she never responded. Did she get my text? But when it's one saying, I miss you and I think about you all day, every day, you have no idea how much I miss you. And then 20 minutes later, if that, I'm not sure the time frame, he's texting the mom, did she get my text? I mean, what's your thought?
I think that mom's probably going to say, don't bother me with this kind of thing.
Right.
And really, it looks to me as if he's not accepting responsibility for the relationship himself. And he's trying to recruit mom and to legitimize himself in the eyes of his child. It's his own insecurity that's coming out there. And
Yep.
he needs to learn that just because the child doesn't respond immediately or the way that he would want her to, doesn't mean she doesn't love him. And so he can't really parentify the child to be his emotional caretaker.
Right, exactly. And what parents in these situations don't realize, like my takeaway message in this situation would be, your actions both in the type of texts he's sending and then texting mom when child doesn't respond right away. All he's doing is pushing her further away. He is making the reunification process that much more difficult and making my job that much more difficult to get them reunified, which is why I felt really strongly compelled to talk about this today. Is it just seems lately in my cases this has been rampant, where parents are responding to kids in a way that just is not helping the situation.
No, and it really, from my point of view, we can advise, we can counsel, we can try to redirect and so forth, but the heavy lifting in a reunification situation, I think, requires a mental health professional.
Yes, and I would agree. But the point you made there that I really want to emphasize too is we need help from the other parties in the game, the other players in the game, if you will, the attorneys, other people like that, family members, whoever. But just like you were talking about being counselor instead of advocate, we really need that. We all have to work together. And there's times where, as a team, we have to say, one member to the other, if you could, I need you to help me get the client to see this or whatever. Um, and we just don't often enough work together as a team. We don't take a team approach to these cases. You've got this attorney and that attorney, and your mental health person, and maybe your financial person. And we aren't all coming together and working together. And I think it's crucial.
No, and it's really difficult to move a client off of the position of I want to win. I want what I want. I think what I want is fair and reasonable. I think no reasonable judge would disagree with me. All of that is spurious thinking. It's not reality by any matter of means. But
Yeah.
it's difficult to get people off of that and to really have them love their children more than they hate their ex because of years of reward for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And speaking of loving your children more than you hate your ex, but however, it's my tagline and I can't even say it. But I'm glad you brought that up because often one of the things parents say, I mean, we didn't, of course, cover it's an exhaustive list of things parents say that they shouldn't. But one of the other things that parents often say or do that they shouldn't is blaming the other parent. Well, you only feel that way because your mom feels that way. You only know that because your mom told you. You only feel that way because all you hear from is your mom and her parents. Stuff like that. Those are not appropriate statements to make to our kids, even if they're true, even if they're true, because sometimes it might be that all the child is hearing is what mom says or grandparents on that side say or whatever. But it doesn't help because children will also take offense to the implication that they can't think for themselves. And that's something I try to impress upon parents also, especially once they get to be in that 10, 11, 12 age range on up. They can think for themselves and
Mhm.
they remember things that you said and did, or they look at things that you're doing or saying now from a little bit more mature perspective than when they were 6 or 8. And so don't imply they can't think for themselves. I have had kids get really upset because a parent implies they can't think for themselves and they're only feeling that way and saying that because their other parent has said it.
Well, I'm consistently surprised by how young children are when they become perceptive, aware of what's going on. They're aware of parental tension or anger. and it hurts them. They don't have any skills to deal with that pain. I doubt that dad thought saying, I love you, I miss you so much would be a harmful statement.
Right.
Uh, I think he just has to learn the implications of that so he can adjust his behavior.
Yes. Yes. And again, we're not bashing on the parents out there who have made these mistakes. Um, I know it often is not intentional, but that's why it's even more important that parents understand the implications of their statements. Because you may not be thinking about it, but think long and hard before you put it in a text to your child.
Yes, absolutely. And again, I think probably people don't understand that they're trying to have their child become their emotional caretaker when they make statements like "I love you."
Yes.
Um, I can't imagine that that would be intentionally harmful. But it does. The parent does need to have insight and understanding of how the child receives that, because
Mhm.
it's different from how an adult would receive that information.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It is totally different. And that's what we have to remember too, is these kids aren't adults. They can't think about things in adult terms. And often we forget that, just like sharing adult information, they can't process that in an appropriate way. And so we just need to keep in mind they are kids and allow them to be kids, and like you said, learn to love their children more than they hate their ex. I mean, that's kind of the key right there, in my opinion, is learning to get over the anger and the hurt and the blaming. And often blame is appropriately placed, but it's still harmful to the child because, as I was saying earlier, even if it's true that they're hearing this from the other parent or grandparents on that side or whoever, it isn't going to help your relationship with the child to point that out. Now you're both equally bad.
And that's fair in the eyes of the judge, but not for the child.
Right. That's right. That's right. Yes. And I don't think most parents, especially when we're doing reunification, want to shoot themselves in the foot. But I see them do it over and over. And then they wonder why it takes so long to get through this process. And let me just kind of end on that point. These cases, for these reasons that we're talking about today, are not a quick and easy fix. And so parents need to understand it's going to be a process. They have to understand there's going to be some educating involved, and don't get defensive. We're here to help. Listen to us with open ears and an open mind and an open heart.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think
All
that's
right.
true.
Yeah.
And
And I think,
I
go
think it's
ahead.
easier for parents to see the mental health professional as the children's advocate than to have their own attorney sometimes advise them that they have to change their behavior.
Yes, that is right. It's better if it comes from me than you. That is true. All right, we are out of time. And so, thank you, George, and we'll see you all next week. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you've been watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll see you next week.
Tune in to The High Road with host Dr. Marlene and gain insight into how to rise above tough circumstances and learn the skills that will help you take the high road in your life, no matter what challenges might come your way, on the next episode of The High Road.